Hello, everyone, and welcome for today's webinar on Community Live 2025 Recap, Key Highlights and Takeaways from KeyMark. Today presenting is KeyMark CEO Ed McQuiston, Chief Sales Officer John Harrison, Support Manager Leah Rice, Director Solutions Architects Ben Vaughn, and special guest Colleen Alber, Product Evangelist at Hyland. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ed now.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to have you with us today for this 2025 Community Live recap. As you'll hear about throughout the presentation, it was an incredibly exciting week out in Las Vegas, having the opportunity to meet with so many of our customers there, but also see the very exciting new technologies that Hyland showed from the main stage, and that Colleen Alber has been kind enough to join us to show you here as part of this webinar. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Ed McQuiston, and as of the end of June, I took on the role of CEO here at KeyMark. Jim Warner remains very much a part of the fabric of the company. He is our chairman of the board, involved in strategic projects. I joined from KeyMark after 20 plus years actually with Hyland and 2.5 years with KeyMark back in the late 2000s. So very excited to be here today and very excited to meet many of you going forward. Just a quick agenda overview for what we're going to talk through. So I want to briefly talk through some of the market trends and shifts, certainly that we're seeing and that Hyland is seeing, that I think necessitates a significant amount of the technology that we're talking about today and how it can fold into your broader enablement plans internally. We'll talk about the top 5 insights from CommunityLIVE. John Harrison is going to walk through those with us. And then we'll have a live demo of the Content Innovation Cloud from Hyland Content Federation that's going to be presented by Colleen. And then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about unlocking the IDP potential and how it directly impacts your AI journeys. We'll talk about KeyMark as your strategic advantage and have some Q&A and try to get everybody out of here on time. I think if you work in the technology space, and maybe even if you don't, I think this is a bit like what it feels right now as it relates to the impact that AI is having on nearly every conversation around technology. It is a ever increasing speed flywheel of opportunity, challenge, and everything in between for organizations. And, you know, one of the things that I asked our customers to do in a luncheon at CommunityLIVE was really to sort of close your eyes and think about, what does technology look like in 3 years? And I think that can be a bit daunting and overwhelming. It can also be exciting and an opportunity for everyone. But one of the reasons I chose that time frame in particular was the fact that I think over these next 3 years, this is a bit like what it's going to feel like, this sort of constant evolution and, exciting, challenging new developments with AI and robotics and everything in between that is impacting the industry and what we're all feeling from a technology standpoint. But the other reason I chose that 3-year window was to really recognize the fact that it was less than 3 years ago today that ChatGPT didn't even exist. It was not released until November 30th of 2022. And this concept of Gen AI that has become almost ubiquitous in the technology space and is driving such a significant amount of IT spend, IT projects, ways to try to automate all of that Gen AI excitement and opportunity just 3 years ago wasn't even in existence. And so as we think about what does the next 3 years hold, it's a significant amount of new technology. One of the things that is the reality that everyone is dealing with, though, is that 95% of the enterprise AI projects are stalled before they're showing results. And there's a reason for that. And it's not because the AI, quote, hype is too much, or that AI is not a tool that, or tool set of tools that we can be successful with. but rather a lot of the focus, unfortunately, has been on superficial metrics over true business impact. And really the idea of picking a particular problem or project, a particular challenge to solve, and diving deep on that in a way that can make real impact for organizations. And at the root of that, the reality of AI is, like so many other technologies that we've talked about with you over the years, whether talking about a tool like OnBase, whether talking about capture tools like Kofax or otherwise, with the right data and the right model, we can solve a lot of problems. But AI, like most other technologies, depends on good data. Like most, it's a garbage in, garbage out type of technology. And so choosing the right problem to solve, finding the right data, and training the models are the absolute keys to success in this space. And that has really brought about a significant amount of discussion around this idea of structured versus unstructured data. And what's interesting is that 80% of corporate information lies in unstructured data. Many of you that are on this webinar are the managers of that unstructured data in the form of OnBase, for example, where some of you have hundreds of thousands, some millions of documents full of unstructured data that can be harnessed to better enable your AI models and AI projects if we can extract that information out in intelligent ways. But up until now, and up until this sort of AI revolution, structured data has been where the spend has been. Structured data has represented 60% of the total expenditure by most IT departments out there. And so there's a growing reality that if we're going to create AI agents, if we're going to create analytics models, if we're going to create downstream process automation, we are going to need information out of our unstructured content sitting in many of your repositories. Certainly, on this call, OnBase being at the forefront of that discussion, but repositories like SharePoint or Box that might also be in your organizations also have critical data to be fed into these agentic solutions. And so I went and asked AI about AI. So I went to Google AI, I went to ChatGPT, and I said, so is this hype, or is there a reality that of the role that documents can play sitting in OnBase or otherwise stored in your content repositories to feed these AI models? And while they both came back with a little bit different verbiage, you'll see in the bullets there some strong similarities. So on the Google one, fueling AI models, powering AI-driven applications. On the left side, training data for AI models, IDP, enterprise search and retrieval. So really AI making the case for us as to the role that content can play when harnessed for AI enablement. And so with that, we're going to talk about what were sort of the top 5 items that really brought a lot of excitement, not just to us, but to the customers that we spoke at CommunityLIVE about after seeing the demonstrations that Colleen are going to give, and how these play into broader AI initiatives in their organizations. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Harrison to talk about our top 5 observations from CommunityLIVE. So John, I'm going to go ahead to number 5 here and just tell me when you want me to move the slides forward.
All right, will do. Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it. And for everyone that joined this morning, we appreciate you guys taking time to join us and hear about what we saw at CommunityLIVE and really where we're going in the future. And one of the things you'll notice as I walk through these top 5, these are really the technologies that we focused on at CommunityLIVE and shared with customers and walked through. This is going to go through kind of the flow of data as it goes through these different technologies to provide you with the outcome and the impact you're looking for from the data. And our job at KeyMark is to work with our customers and help you understand how all of these different technologies fit together to provide you the outcome you're looking for with the data. In the past, we talked a lot about how do we automate these different business processes within the organization, but the true goal now with the technology and how much it's grown and the capabilities that are out there for you guys to take advantage of, the question that all of you should be asking is, what do I want to do with the data? What am I looking for? How are we going to drive our business forward? How are we going to improve the business decisions we're making with this data? And start with that question and then figure out how are we going to take you from capture all the way to a decision point and getting that data very quickly so that you can make better, faster, and more impactful decisions for your business, and know that the data that you're accessing is clean and it's the right data and it's going to give you the right answer. So with IDP, that's the first step, is getting that data into the systems and into the data lakes and all the different sets of data that you want to access so that you can make those business decisions and have access to the data very quickly at the spur of the moment. Next slide, Ed. So one of the things you're going to see when we turn it over to Colleen is this flow of data through the system. And we're really excited about what Hyland has brought to the customer base in Content Innovation Cloud and Content Federation, and how you can easily access multiple different streams of data, different databases, data lakes, even applications where you have captured that data, put it into a structured format so that you can use that to make business decisions. We'll be talking about how you can do that and showing you that here in just a few minutes. Next slide. So we're all excited about the agentic process automation. Many of you have already seen this with what Hyland is providing for our customers. Many of you are using different technologies for this already in your own environment. But we're very excited about what Hyland is bringing to the table. It's ready to go. You're going to see some of it today. But what it can do for you to get to that data and get the answers you're looking for so much faster than the way we've done it in the past. And just to back up a second, many of you, at least those of you that are as old as I am, probably remember going through the same process back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the big craze was business intelligence and being able to get the data clean and ready for a BI rollout. This is no different, other than you don't have to have someone in IT create you a report or go to them and say, hey, I need this, I need that. With the agentic process, you can go in and say, this is what I need, this is the format I need it, and I need it to access these sets of data. Being able to do that is going to change the game, and it's going to get that data in your hands much faster with the ability to make much better business decisions on the fly. Next slide. So with all that said, the importance of clean data cannot be overstated. Just like with BI, as I mentioned a second ago, you've got to have clean data to get what you want out of the system. And how you get there is going to start with that capture process. So you can see how the flow of these different technologies will get you to the point of being able to utilize clean content and make sure that when you ask the system, you ask a set of data, a question, that you can be confident in the answer you're getting back, it's correct, and it's going to lead to better business decisions. Next slide. So as we pull that all together, what KeyMark partnered with Hyland and partnered with you guys, our customers, what we're looking to do is be your strategic partner in this intelligent automation, but take it all the way to the point of, what am I trying to get out of my data? What do I need? What are the questions I'm going to be asking? And how do I get that quick? And how do I make it better and more accurate so that I can serve my customers better? So we're going to share that with you now, and want to thank Colleen Alber for being with us today. And with that, I will turn it over to her so she can show you some of the awesome stuff that we got to see at CommunityLIVE. Colleen, thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, John, Ed, and KeyMark for having me. Thrilled to be here. I see some familiar faces on the line. Hi, Melissa Foster and others who I had the chance to say hi to at CommunityLIVE. The story today of our Content Innovation Cloud experience is a healthcare specific application, but I hope that this agentic mailroom story will resonate with many of you. I can't underscore enough that what I'm going to show has been delivered and is available for you to start to take advantage of within your organization. So while healthcare specific, let's focus on the wow of the functionality and send your questions into the chat as I go. But just so that you have a little background, our story today centers around patient financial services at a medium-sized health system, and they receive upwards of 2 million pieces of billing correspondence annually that has to be processed manually. And what we're going to do with the Content Innovation Cloud is to intelligently automate this process, resulting in millions of dollars in recovered reimbursements. Our research team talked to several customers, and it seems like an agentic mailroom where some of our CIC solutions are doing some of the triage for that customer organization is a great place to start. So we're going to do just that. So here I am in the CIC. For those that have not seen this before, it's a cloud native application. It looks and feels a little different, matching with Hyland's new brand. You'll notice that it's all browser based, and I will log in as a solution builder. So I'm like a system admin, and I'm going to begin in studio modeling, which is akin to some of the configuration tools we know and love today. But in this case, this is the behind the scenes configuration of AI powered solutions. So studio modeling is the behind the scenes configuration experience. And we're going to start with IDP, or intelligent document processing. And this new generation of what was formerly capture products uses a mix of OCR tools as well as AI agents for document separation, classification, and extraction. And I've pre-configured a project here for revenue cycle correspondence, and it will eventually become a package solution in this healthcare space. But I think the horizontal application of the mailroom hopefully will resonate with everyone here. So we pre-configured a couple classifications in our on-base lingo. These would be like our document types. We're just calling them in classifications here. And we have some pre-configured, but I want to show you just how easy it is to create a new class. All I have to do for this refund request is give the name of the document. I don't have to describe it. I don't have to configure a template. Like I, like many of you, have configured many an advanced capture template to tell the tool where to look. I don't even have to train the agents. Like they already know if it's a claim denial or a piece of correspondence or a refund request. The name is enough. The configuration is that simple, truly, really, which means that it's so much easier to get these types of solutions off the ground, up and running in your environment. We can give you access today to a URL, right? A cloud-based IDP instance where you can practice and play with your own content within your organization. In my example, I'm going to import a few files from my machine. But before I do, I want to draw your attention to this on-base on the right-hand side and introduce you to what we're affectionately calling here at Hyland our Content Federation Service. So we built the CIC with you, our on-base and Hyland customers in mind. And I mean that genuinely. The CIC and on-base is just all part of Hyland Solutions. They are not two separate entities, but one and the same. And we see the CIC, or the Content Innovation Cloud, as a way to elevate existing implementations in a fast, easy, AI-driven way. The Content Innovation Cloud is a single integrated cloud platform. So one cloud platform that can integrate to not just on-base, but to your other applications within your organization as well. But of course, in the case of Hyland's own repositories, we're going to, bring some extra gifts to the table. One is the ability to import sample documents from on-base to test with. The other is to import existing on-base configuration. So all I need to do is select my existing on-base document type, and I can connect my on-base system. I can leverage that work that I've already done and connect it to CIC IDP. And now I don't have to go through, for those of you that are using other capture tools, you know the game of having to do all the mapping, right? Document type here, map them up, keywords. You don't have to do any of that here because we're contextually aware. We know on-base, we know that database structure. That's all you need to do to connect that on-base document type. So now I'm going to bring in some files from my local machine. Of course, these can come from absolutely anywhere in true Hyland fashion. But as they come in, I'll show you the sample batch. So we have the 3 documents that I just imported, and we can see some thumbnails here. And I'll bring your attention to this local lockbox file. So this is one file, but it's multiple individual documents. And our AI agents are going to separate that into the individual document types. So I'm going to go ahead and click separate and classify, and our AI agents will get to work doing 2 things: separating the large lockbox file into the individual documents, and then identifying what those documents are. And this is all agentic AI agents behind the scenes going to work. And I know, right, from 20 years of Hyland's history and being in this space, that document separation is a former challenge that has now been tackled by our new Hyland IDP. And we can see now that that local lockbox file has been separated into individual documents. Like big, big, big news. Even that alone, if you didn't even get into the extraction, is a huge win of this tool. And we're seeing it work with high degrees of accuracy. And we even store, the information for that explainable AI as to why it chose this classification type versus the other. So you have all that information readily available as well. So let's do now the fun part, right? That keyword extraction. Let's look at the additional documentation request, and it's really tiny, but you'll recall that this was the document type that we connected and leveraged from OnBase, which means that on the right-hand side, we don't have to do any configuration of the keyword types or the metadata fields because we already know what they are. And we're given 2 confidence levels, both that of the OCR, we use Amazon Text Track behind the scenes, and the extraction of the value. So one is the translation of the machine printed text to the machine readable text. And then it was, okay, now that we have that data, the reasoning that the AI agents used to extract the appropriate value in the right way. So that's kind of a standard example. Machine printed text looks like it's a decent quality document. Let's go to one that's a little bit more challenging. And I love this example because this document is handwritten, right? ICR, former challenge, and in Spanish, language translation, big challenge of the past. And we have this document now that has been scanned in, and we've got it in Spanish, we've got it handwritten. And I could go through and I could configure all of the keyword types, but our extraction agent service, right, has the ability to suggest metadata fields for us. So it's looking at this document and with a degree of intelligence, identifying what could be possible pieces of metadata that you might want to collect. And you can go through and select all of them or individual ones. But I mean, this is like a head explode moment. It translated handwriting in Spanish into English keyword values. I'll just let that like sit out there for a second. But let's say I want to add an additional field, right? You're familiar with this type of point and click configuration, true to Hyland's roots. I can do a text field, I can do a table, but we've got a really special new classification type or extraction field, I guess I would call it, which is that of reasoning, where the field that I want to grab or the information that I want to collect is not straight text on the document. The extraction agent has to look at the document and with some degree of reasoning, determine what that value might be. And I've seen this work with all kinds of cool things. Give me a summary. What do you think about this application? Is it high risk or low risk? Like take a guess and why? And it's reasoning and giving an answer. In our case, we'll do something simple, signed by guarantor. And I'm going to say, give me a yes, no response. And now we can see that the document here has been signed, but there isn't like a signature field per se, and it's in Spanish and it's handwritten. And we'll save this keyword value. And now it's going to reason and say, yes, this document has been signed, and it's given us both that OCR and extraction confidence levels. And we can use these confidence levels downstream to determine if we want a human to review. And then all of the reasoning as to why these different values were selected in the first place and why we gave them this, 99% extraction confidence level can all be part of your process to determine when and where you want a human in the loop. So this was almost the end of our IDP process configuration. This is in our OnBase speak, our document types and our keywords. We have this set up now, and it's all agent driven. And look at the time that it took to get this configured. Not much at all. Now, the beauty of the CIC is that our IDP flows right into our automate process orchestration engine. Now, many of you that are using workflow today, you're going to continue to do that. And I'm going to show how those two worlds connect. But there may be other processes that have not yet been automated, or processes where you want to orchestrate and bring some consistency across multiple systems within your application. So I'm going to open up an existing process here. And this is, again, part of that revenue cycle correspondence process or project. So we already have some of this configured. But I want to show you a few highlights, just showcasing what Hyland's Automate can do. Again, this is all cloud-based, can connect to any application with any RESTful service, as well as a myriad of other pre-built, purposeful integrations. But here we're leveraging that content federation service again. You saw it with that document type that we brought in. Here we're using that same federation service to say, you know what, perform an autofill, do a keyword validation against OnBase. I've already got the data. That's one of the ways in which we can further ensure that these AI agents are extracting the correct values, because they're pretty smart. But then we're also double checking that information against what we already have. And then lastly, if there is a need for a human to review, and we can configure when and where that might take place, we're building those screens automatically. Okay, so this is Hyland Automate in a nutshell. Truly compliant BPMN engine that can facilitate, right, data-driven conversations and process automation between Hyland products and others. So the intake piece of our process has been completed, but now we need to do something with these documents. We know what they are. We know something about them. Now it's time for someone to take action. And that's where we introduced Hyland's Agent Builder. And I'm telling you, this was the biggest Hyland headline of the summer. You know, maybe even bigger than the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce engagement announcement was Hyland Agent Builder. All right, so in the same way, we can build forms and we can build processes. We can build agents with natural language. And I wish I had time to show you all of that, but I want to show a little bit of Agent Builder. All I need to do is give my agent a name, Colleen's agent, and I'll do it generically here. And then you can see all I have to do is describe it, choose my large language model, give it some instructions, and tell the agent what to do. Well, we can describe in our own natural language forms and processes as well, like jump starting that process. But in the interest of time, I'm going to skip ahead to an agent that I've already configured. If we call back to our patient financial services billing department at our hospital, let's look at the two agents that are going to step into an existing process to do some of that document triage for us. The first one is going to route the document to the appropriate place and set a priority. And this particular agent is using Claude, but all of Hyland's content intelligence products are LLM agnostic, which means that you can choose from the list of the models that we have and work with, and we'll give you pros and cons lists of some of them. It also gives you an opportunity to play around with different ones. But you can also bring your own model as well. So if you're subscribing to an OpenAI or another LLM that you want to invoke, we can bring that in and use that here too. This first agent is going to determine what we need to do and set a priority based on a policy document that we've given the agent. So much like you would give a new employee, here's the policy, here's the instructions on how to do your job. We're doing that same thing with this agent. And we're also providing guardrails. So again, back to building trust and confidence in the AI, we're also telling these agents, if you come across a particular scenario, you're not to get involved. Route it to a human, right? It could be cases that involve a minor or high dollar amounts, just to give a couple examples that we're kind of hearing from customers. And then I just describe what I want the agent to do. And now when we think about, you know, workers in a company, there's more than one. And the same thing is going to be true of these agents, but they're coworkers. They work together. So our second agent in the chain of agents is going to summarize the request, outline the next steps, and take action. And again, we've given it a policy, we've given this agent guardrails, and they talk to each other. So first person or agent does their work, then the second. Now, this particular agent is using the OnBase MCP server. This is new technology, it's new terminology. It was for me too, but it's pretty big deal that Hyland is using it because it's new open source standardization from Anthropic, like a leader in this kind of open AI space. So it stands for Model Context Protocol, and it's essentially a way for agents to talk to other agents, to other systems, and maybe even more importantly for AI to talk to systems that weren't born and bred in AI. So something like OnBase. If we want to reference content in OnBase, it's a way for it to speak to all these other applications in a standardized and secure way. And we have an OnBase MCP server for you to start to take advantage of today. So AI that you're building with Hyland and with others can talk to your OnBase system, because that's where the context of a lot of these AI-driven decisions will come from. Past decisions, past documents, the historical record that is your OnBase system. Okay, so we have our 2 agents created, and you know, of course, we could insert this into a new process flow, but you might be wondering, okay, great. How do these agents elevate or uplift the existing OnBase process or workflow that I have in place, replacing human steps there, where I might route to a human user? All we have to do is connect the 2. So I'm going to navigate over to my OnBase studio, and you'll see here that I'm in a billing and correspondence processing workflow that is in my OnBase studio. And I have a former task here that was route for human review. And I'm going to replace that with new agentic logic, one for my routing and prioritization agent, and then the other for my summary and next steps. So I've grayed out my former human task, and I'm going to replace it with an agent. And how do we connect now this agent we built in the CIC to our OnBase workflow? All you have to do is build in the logic in your workflow, and then use the universally unique ID of the agent in CIC as a property in your OnBase workflow. And then these 2 worlds are connected. And we're calling that agent to do some of the work, perform the task, and bring us back an outcome so that our human in the loop user can take a look and review. So now we have our agents and our OnBase world connected. If I navigate back, I'm here in the CIC, we're going to now see this in action in our OnBase agentic mailroom. So now we're in OnBase, and this is the OnBase app builder, which I hope many of you, my fellow OnBase fans and fanatics, are using. This is a personalized, simplified OnBase experience. It's web, it's mobile, it's clean, it's modern. All these little gray boxes here, they just represent work. So this could be a workflow queue, this could be a work view filter. And I know what you might be thinking, like 8,000 items total processed today. This looks like a heck of a lot of work. Well, remember some of the volumes that our healthcare organization was receiving, 2 million documents annually. So this looks like a lot of work, but remember that our agents have done a lot of this work for us. They've triaged them, they've set the priority, they've done some of the work for our human user. So let's look at some of the additional documentation requests. Specifically, this high priority item for Mary. Like, why might it be high priority? Well, we have a certain amount of time to get back to the insurance company so that they'll pay the claim. And, you know, it could be a very specific procedure that Mary needs. We want to get it covered. So let's dive in. This is that document. And notice the work that the agent has done. It's provided a summary, next steps. Here's what we need to do next, summary of the request, next steps, and the reason. So again, we're inserting the explainability of the AI throughout the process. And you may be thinking to yourself, this does not look like my OnBase interface. Well, this is the OnBase app builder. This is a workview object where we have taken advantage of workview display templates, which have been around for a couple years, but we really revamped in OnBase Foundation 25.1. So lest you think we are not making updates to OnBase as well, we are. This is a new and improved OnBase interface. But if we look at this request for additional documentation from our insurance company, it's saying in order for us to pay this claim, we're going to need a little bit more background on this request. Like, did you do all the things you needed to do before you jumped ahead to this surgery that Mary's requesting or that Mary had? And our agent, and I think for me, this is like the goosebumps moment. Our agent is going to find the additional documents in OnBase and present them to our user. So again, I'm still in OnBase. I'm going to show those additional documents. And now our human user takes a look, they review, and we send these off to the insurance company so that the hospital can get paid and that Mary can get the care that she needs. And so our demo could certainly stop right here. And I hope to have illustrated how the CIC has elevated and really energized an existing OnBase process. I personally cannot be more excited to be in this space right now. Feels like content is cool again. And thrilled at the opportunity to give this demo again, but we have an opportunity to not just make the existing process better, but to transform the landscape of how things work. We can use Hyland Knowledge Discovery, so one of our CIC tools, to ask questions of our existing content. So I'm now in Knowledge Discovery, and all of these little agents, we're talking agents again, are on the left-hand side. And think of these as your AI-powered search assistants with domain expertise. And our patient billing agent has access to our on-base additional documentation requests, and it's built with MetaLlama. And now we're going to ask a question. But it's so much more, and I think we have to like reframe our brains. We know the search of like document types, keywords, get a hit list, and then I've got to open up all the documents to try to make some inference or understanding as to what's happening. Now the agents have an understanding of this content and can provide valuable, meaningful insights. So how do we prevent some of these additional documentation requests from coming into the first place? Well, we need to know like what treatments are requiring them. So bear with me while I copy and paste my question in. Which procedures at the hospital most frequently require requests for additional documentation from the insurance company? That's essentially what we're asking. And now our agent is reviewing vast amounts of data in a time frame that no human ever could, and providing us with insightful data that says, boy, it's really these inpatient short stays. What are we not providing the insurance company that we could start providing to prevent these from coming in the first place? And I don't know about you, but this is bigger than anything Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are up to. We have a wild opportunity ahead of us to implement AI in a meaningful and safe way to revolutionize what we're doing with content. And I loved what Jitesh said at CommunityLIVE for those who are there, so that we could start to spend more time with each other. We don't need to have as much human interaction and review, but now the hospital is getting paid in a shorter amount of time. The insurance company is processing more efficiently, getting their costs down, passing hopefully those savings on to the patient, but also ensuring that they get the best possible care. So with that, thank you for your grace, as I probably went a couple minutes over my assorted timeline, but I'm just thrilled to share this demo. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them now. Or Ed, John, I'll pass back over to you.
Yeah, Colleen, first of all, thank you so much. That was fantastic, and no worries on the time. This was obviously, you know, a CommunityLIVE recap, and I think what people came here to see. Maybe just a couple of quick questions for you.
Sure.
So, you know, of the things that you just showed, which was quite a bit, what could customers begin to use right now?
I think my favorite, and where I'm hearing and seeing the most interest and where we have the most customers starting today, is with IDP, or the intelligent document processing. Just capturing, getting good data, getting better data, using agents to do it. And I didn't show an example of, hey, agent, give me a summary of this document, or give me some interpretations, or give me your initial assessment. But some of that type of capture can be done with IDP as well. That's where I see customers starting. Let's get better data. Let's get it fast. Let's make it good. Let's get as much as we want, because it's not costing us what we used to, so that now our data is AI ready and it's feeding on-base or other systems, so that downstream our agents have better quality data to work with.
And now I'm going to ask your favorite question.
Yeah.
When will all this be released?
Ed, thank you for asking. It is already available. IDP, Knowledge Discovery, Automate were released in 2025. Even Automate was 2024. So all of these tools, this is not beta. This is not a prototype. Everything I showed is available in production today for you to start to take advantage of. And I said it when I kicked off, but I'll say it again. We can give you an environment where you can start to play around with this at a low cost of entry, because it's all cloud-based. You don't have to do all this installation. You could take some of your own sample documents, just as I did, configure a few classifications, and really test the tool and put it to the test.
And we had one question that came in via the Q&A, which was for the workflow connection.
Yes.
Does it require 25, or could it also work in 24?
It could also work in 24. You've got a few versions back that it will be compatible. We certainly want you to be on the latest and greatest versions of OnBase, but in the case of that connection, you could use OnBase 24, 25, and then in about a year we'll release 26. You'll obviously be good there as well. But it's really just inserting that universally unique ID as a workflow property and then calling that agent. So We have our Content Federation service and a lot of those other services that are backwards compatible to earlier versions of OnBase, so not just 25. So there's a lot of opportunity. We want you to upgrade, but you don't have to.
You even got a clapping hands emoji. I don't know if you saw that pop on
I'll
your
take
screen.
it. All
So
the hearts, all the clapping hands.
all of that.
I'm not
Absolutely. Well, a couple of things I want to make sure customers took away because, under the time pressure, I know you have to go so quickly. But, one thing that Colleen said that should really, I hope, resonate with each of you is, Hyland's philosophy on this has been meet you where you are. All of this is built with connectors into OnBase. And I mentioned how long I've been in this particular industry, but technology in general, this sort of leap forward has almost required in so many technology vendors a quote unquote re-platform, which is really just a nice way of saying to switch products, within the same vendor. And Hyland has painstakingly built this on top of their existing platforms with connections to those existing platforms to advantage you through your existing investment, but also connect to other repositories outside of the Hyland umbrella, which I think is incredibly impressive. And then, the last thing I would just point out that, Colleen touched on briefly, but I think is really important is, having been at Hyland as long as I was and spoken to so many customers, UI has been a piece of feedback for years and years. Colleen knows this. We've lived it. And what she spoke about there with the app builder should not go unnoticed. If you look at the majority of the demo and the sort of modern UI, but more importantly with the app builder, the personalized UI to the individual is something that shouldn't be glossed over. There's a ton of cool, mind-blowing, functionality that she showed there. But, don't lose the small stuff in there too, which is, the advantages that these upgrades give you with, the experience for your users in addition to all this new functionality. So Colleen, I really, want to appreciate you being here to present. The last thing I'll say as it relates to CommunityLIVE, before I jump into our next topic here is CommunityLIVE 26 will be in Orlando next year, but I want you to note the dates at the bottom. For those of you who have attended in the past and might attend in the future, it has typically been sometime in September, early October, this year, late August, but always in that early sort of fall timeframe. And the conference is shifting forward for, I think, the foreseeable future. So it will be May 30th to June 2nd. Not too early to start planning for that. As you can see, with the advancement of technology and the speed of advancement, it'll be great to have many of you there next year. So I want to touch on briefly before we wrap up today. So, I asked Colleen the question of, what do you think is, what stands out? And I think that, her answer of IDP is something that we would agree with wholeheartedly. But the question is why? Why is IDP so important? And I touched on it a little bit earlier, and I wanted to bring this quote. So Alan Pell-Sharp from Deep Analysis only covers the IDP and unstructured content industry, and he's done so for 20 plus years. And, he wrote a blog last week, and he talked about some of the, disillusionment with AI associated with some of those stalled projects that I mentioned at the beginning. And it's not because AI is not capable of really mind-popping things. It's that it requires some foundational work to be done strategically to make it as valuable as it can be. And what he talks about here is the value of any technology is contingent on the quality of the information it consumes. It goes back to what I said earlier. Even AI is a garbage in, garbage out technology. And so he says, suddenly the unglamorous work of data governance and content hygiene and knowledge curation matter. They're not a cost center anymore. They're a strategic investment. So what you're seeing in some of the survey data that Deep Analysis did on this topic is that not only is Gen AI driving disruption, but it's driving a considerable amount of new IDP projects. 65% of the people surveyed said they are doing a new IDP project, and in particular, upgrades to existing use cases. I know that many of you who are joining here may be on, existing products from KeyMark, some legacy Kofax products or legacy products of, other vendors that you're wanting to be able to take advantage of all that's new in AI and these new IDP functions. And that's what you're seeing in this this data. And not only are you seeing that the importance of it, but the fact that, yes, in 2025, believe it or not, the primary document source going in IDP is still paper. And not only is it still paper, but somehow the paper is growing. 48% of the survey respondents saying they anticipate more in the next 12 months. And that doesn't, discount the fact that a lot of what's going into IDP and unstructured content solutions starts at digital. So you see native digital documents like PDFs and office files and everything else, but paper's still a part of it. And will these new IDP projects replace an existing application? 2/3 of the respondents says yes, and primarily because that newer functionality and some of that ability to recognize and classify in a much faster way with much less services and implementation time put in to get these products up and running, to get these new projects up and running, is a huge part of the advantage. And so I wanted to sort of share with you a little bit about how we've been talking about it internally at KeyMark and where we see so much of the advantage with IDP and how it connects to OnBase, and just as importantly, how it connects to your broader ecosystem. So, most customers that we speak to, they, certainly our customers, they've got an OnBase repository, but they've also got a data lake, a data warehouse. Maybe it's just a sort of a larger SQL database, but somewhere that you're connecting or collecting all of your structured data from your line of business systems. Maybe in insurance, it's your claim system. Maybe it's a billing system. It's staple applications like CRMs and, HRMSs and ERPs, maybe specialty apps, and you're collecting all that structured data in a data lake. But when we think about the OnBase repository, and very specifically when we think about the idea of data in OnBase, we were all taught in our first OnBase class to collect what? The least metadata possible to find the document later, plus any additional metadata required for decisioning and workflow. No more than that. So for the majority of us, it's 4, 5, 6, maybe 8 fields that we've collected associated with every document in our system. So when Colleen types in a question, where she's asking for information back, obviously we need a much broader set of data. And the example I always use is a contract, right? How might I look up a contract in an existing OnBase repository? Well, who's the vendor? Maybe I'm looking up, based on some sort of vendor number that we have, 3, 4 fields that I pull that contract back. But how many of us have ever been asked to pull a contract or pulled one ourselves because we wanted to read the contract in its entirety? No one. What we wanted to know was, what's the discount that was agreed to? What was the termination provision? What was the indemnity clause? What was the limited liability? And we want to be able to do that by just putting into a regular AI prompt and ask, what was the limited liability on this vendor contract, right? And have that information brought back. Well, all those contracts that are sitting in an OnBase repository, for example, are full of that kind of data. And then, of course, in our ERP system, we have a lot of additional data associated with that vendor. And so the connectivity, the connective tissue really between your daily transaction flow, your existing repository, and your data lake is this idea of IDP. And so whether you're doing a OnBase-centric search where I want to use the agent solutions that Colleen just showed you to search through the OnBase content to pull back information without having to know the metadata and everything else, or whether we want to use IDP to connect that data that we are able to now pull out of the existing repository and marry it with information from the data lake for our searching, that really is the power that we're talking about with what I would call a fulcrum technology that is IDP. It is a foundational building block to leveraging your unstructured content and unstructured data as part of any sort of AI enablement. Now, whether that information is part of an LLM, for example, as part of what is happening in OnBase, whether your LLMs reside outside, as Colleen mentioned, they are agnostic to the LLM and able to use them wherever they may reside if you've built your own, if you're leveraging third parties. But one of the things that changes the game in all of this that Colleen highlighted is this idea of MCP. And if you're new to MCP, and most of us are because it's a very, very new technology, to me, it's a cheat code. And when I say that, what I mean is that it becomes a connecting mechanism to any number of data sources where a line of business system has an MCP layer that alleviates the need for you to know the APIs of all these different systems out there, to go and get data from different systems out there, but to simply have your agent call the MCP layer of your Salesforce application, of your Workday application, of your OnBase application, and to pull information back by having your agent speaking to other agents. And it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how do you tie all of this together. Because the most critical thing from a KeyMark standpoint is to understand that each customer we have has a different looking ecosystem, and the solution has to be right for that ecosystem. And so where IDP becomes such a secret sauce to all of this is the ability to pull data, whether again it's daily transaction flow, whether it's from third-party systems like SharePoint or Box or other repositories, whether it's from OnBase, using the MCP layer to go communicate with other data sources, pulling that information into a data lake to build your analytics off of. Imagine your analytics models that have only been built on structured data being enhanced by pulling information out of OnBase into those data models for further analytics. I think about, in insurance, things like fraud detection. How much information have you built into your data analytics that came from the police reports that you've stored, the body shop estimates that you've stored, all those additional pieces, heck, the digital photos themselves of an accident? How much have you, been able to include in any sort of analytics models? In most cases, the answer is probably next to none. All of that really changes by implementing the IDP layer and beginning to connect the dots along with things like CIC Federation services, connecting it downstream to your data lakes, whether that's Databricks or Snowflake or Azure Fabric or any of those types of tools. The possibilities are so significant. So, why is KeyMark uniquely positioned as your IDP partner? Well, many of you have been using a KeyMark provided, piece of software, whether it was Colfax in the past, but really from our very beginnings, we've been part of the enterprise content, unstructured document, advanced intelligent capture industries. And a lot of this technology obviously has been involved, but also relabeled. So as we talk about unstructured content, in many ways that's replaced the term for ECM, unstructured data. And IDP is really the new version, new name, new label for, this kind of industry that's been around for a long time, that started as OCR and forms processing, which KeyMark started implementing in the late 90s, into things like advanced capture, intelligent capture, dynamic capture, IDP being sort of the latest label, but all things that are solutions that KeyMark has been providing, consulting on, providing expertise on, implementing, selling, supporting throughout the history of the company for more than or almost 30 years. And the thing that we would caution all of you out there is it's not just us that recognizes that IDP is such a critical technology to AI. In fact, the industry's recognized it so much that there are now over 450 IDP vendors and growing by the day that are, out there talking about their IDP solutions. And the sort of joking, tongue-in-cheek quote that I put up here is there's a lot of what I would call instant IDP vendors, speaking to the fact that, you can't spell magic without AI. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because it really is being positioned by so many organizations in a way that I would call honestly irresponsible. And when I say that, what I mean is not every customer is equipped to ask the critical questions that are going to result in either success or failure as it relates to IDP. Colleen touched on some of the absolutely critical things. We've been in competition already with IDP vendors, I'll say quote unquote, that are providing solutions that do not have what we would consider table stakes, greens fees. If you're doing IDP and you cannot classify a document, and if you're not familiar with classification, I need to be able to automatically recognize what type of document this is when it comes in. I don't want someone to have to create SEP sheets or put barcode sheets on or sort things into piles. I want to be able to classify the document to know what type of document is this and where does it start and stop. Is it 3 pages, 7 pages, 12 pages, 100 pages? I need to be able to classify and separate. We've been in competition with tools that do not do this. In fact, most of the IDP tools being sold out there are not offering this. They're assuming you've already separated your documents by type and done the work for them. My question would be, why? Why should you as the customer have to do that? That work should be part of the IDP solution. Well, once I've classified a document and I know what it is, well, then I certainly can apply my extraction rules as to what do I want out of this document? What's the most critical information that's in the document? And so classification, separation, extraction, but the piece that's missing in so many of these solutions, and I'll get to, so why is it missing? Primarily because what most organizations are doing, and I'm speaking even the largest of the large, Salesforce is selling an IDP solution. Workday sells an IDP solution. Snowflake sells an IDP solution. They do not classify, they do not separate, they extract, but what they do not have built in, because most of these are a user interface sitting on top of open source tools, they do not have a validation step. They're not presenting information. One of the things that Colleen said multiple times that I want to make sure that you catch, because she very strategically said it multiple times, which is this idea of human in the loop processing. Just because the IDP solution says, well, this is in fact a progress note and it's 5 pages and I've extracted this information, doesn't mean it's always right. And so when it has questions, then what? If the IDP solution doesn't have a validation interface, what happens? It just pushes downstream wrong. So what happens when we run our Gen AI tool? We're now producing hallucinations. We're now producing bad information. When you read about some of these stalled AI projects that I referenced at the beginning, what you'll hear back is people feeling like they have to police their own Gen AI engines for the data that it's spitting out. Well, you shouldn't have to do that. If you are using IDP and you have the right validation steps and the right validation interface, what you get out is clean data. And now you've really started to unleash the full power of your AI downstream. So if I were to leave you with one thing as to how could you engage KeyMark related to anything that we just talked about, it would be to have a conversation with your account manager or your solution architect, solution engineer from KeyMark about doing an IDP assessment, taking a look whether it's at your existing system that you have from us doing capture today, whether it's new capture ideas, new document types, because the capabilities that exist today unlock lots of new solutions that weren't previously contemplated in the older capture tools, and have us come in and do that assessment, as well as help you to build out the return on investment and business case components for that IDP investment. So I went a little longer than I'd hoped. I hoped I would leave a little bit more time here for any questions, but I'm double checking now to see what's in the chat. Don't see anything new, but we've got 2 minutes left. All right. Well, Melissa Foster wants to know, Colleen, why is CommunityLIVE starting on a Saturday?
Great question.
I see you responded there. So, well, I'm okay as this, now if it was college football Saturday, I'd be having a different conversation.
Right.
But, well, we very much appreciate, we've had a number of people on here today that joined. I appreciate that you carved out an hour to spend time with us. As you can see here, the technology that Colleen walked through, the power of it, I can tell you sitting in the room at CommunityLIVE with, 1,500 plus of my closest Hyland community friends was, sort of a jaw-dropping moment as we went through some of the technology that was there. So, if you want to learn more, again, please reach out to your account rep, please reach out to your sales engineer. More than happy. Colleen said, one of the things that I think is critical here is if you want to start playing with this technology, these are cloud environments. It's a low cost of entry to start, putting together a sandbox, to see how this is going to work for you. And, I couldn't encourage you enough to do that. So hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Thanks for spending time with us today, joining the webinar, and we'll talk to all of you soon. Take care. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks, Ed.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.